Hi, Alice here. I'm excited today. Just a couple of weeks ago, I spotted trilliums looking like they were coming up. I put them in a little protected bed because I knew that the deer might come and graze on them. And sure enough, they're up. Got them about this time, mid-February. They like a shady area. These are planted not far from the live oak trees that I have in my yard. I'm hoping that over time they may spread and I will have a whole patch that will fill in this area. It's such an excitement for me because these are very unusual plants for Florida. In fact, they only are vetted in 8 counties in north central Florida. And I'm fortunate enough in Madison County to be part of that area. They need some cold in order to thrive. This trillium species, the Wakerobin or red trillium, it grows from Maine in the northern part of the eastern United States across to Michigan, down through the Appalachian Mountains and the eastern part of the United States to the border of Georgia, Florida. I'm in the southernmost tip of the range and I have the right environment. This wildflower is going to be here longer than I am because it can live 30 to 40 years. If you're interested in adding it to your garden, check out to be successful growing these Wakerobin Trillium. This plant's USDA hardiness says 5 to 8. It grows very slowly by seed. So the best option, if you can find a reputable nursery or grower in your area, consider getting plants. A little background information about the plant. In North Florida area where I am, it can come up as early as December. However, I noticed mine towards the end of January. These plants are producing their flowers off of rhizomes that come up, and they have brackets, and these are like a leaf, and they're used for photosynthesis, and the flowers come out of the bracket. It's a smallish plant. Over time, it will produce a clump area. When you plant it, you only need to space it about 12 inches apart, and you just leave them. The criteria I use when I'm selecting my plants, and this might be helpful, first is the soil. It likes rich, humusy, wormy kind of soil. Although, when I was on the Florida Native Plant Society website for information on the Wakerobin Trillium, it did mention sand. That was good to know because my yard is part loam and part sand. Sun requirement is the second thing that I take into consideration. This plant is a shade plant. It tolerates partial sun, a dappled area. It prefers shade and it will also thrive in deep shade. The third is water requirements. This plant likes moist soil. Because I have a mixture of loam and sand, I cover that planting area with leaves. They'll decompose and release nutrients. I also put a mulch down of mini pine bark nuggets. As that decomposes, that adds more nutrients and improves the soil. The pH range for the soil for these plants is 6.0, which is considered acidic, to 8.0, which is considered alkaline. The other thing to consider if I'm going for wildflowers is when are they going to bloom? What's the bloom color? And what is the form of the bloom? As far as bloom time, the Wakerobin Trillium blooms late winter into the spring. That could be anywhere from late December, early January, end of March, maybe very beginning of April, depending on where you are. The bloom color can range from a dark reddish color to a dark burgundy to even a brown. And when I was looking at the blooms on my plant, they're more towards the dark burgundy brownish color. As far as bloom, more modest, smaller flowers. The petals on the flower open up and there's 3 petals. Caught my Trillium blooming. These are known for their 3 petals that open on the flowers and the 3 leaves. Gardening tip for planting. Choose your spot carefully because whatever you choose, you want it to be permanent. If you have an area under a canopy, a tree canopy, and you can plant along the roots, that's an ideal location. Keep them watered because they like the soil moist. You want to get the roots well established. And then during times of drought, like sometimes we have a month or 2 where it doesn't rain, I will water that area once a week to make sure that I keep the soil moist, and I will keep a mulch 2 to 3 inches on top of that area. The plants do die back after they've bloomed, so it's important to mark your area, or like I have deer fencing, so I know inside that cage is where my plants are located. Occasionally we'll go out and make sure that I remove weeds because the weed roots will compete with my Trillium plants for nutrients and moisture. Frequently, folks want to propagate this plant. How can I do that? This is one of those plants that can be extremely difficult to propagate. It's ants that help propagate. And you would say, how does an ant propagate a wildflower? There's a sticky substance on the seed of the Trillium, and it has a compound in it that is very enticing for ants. When the flowers die back, forms a little seed pod kind of basket. It has only a few seeds in it. Unlike the Bidens, for example, thousands of seeds per plant. Trillium, a few seeds per plant. So the ants will take that and they want to eat the sticky part. Ants live underground, so they're taking the seed underground, and hopefully you'll have little seedlings that come up. That's something to be watchful for. You don't want to pull them up inadvertently thinking they're weeds, because from seed to flower can be 5 to 9 years. So it's a very slow propagation situation. As a senior gardener, that kind of a time period for me is too long. So whenever I find out that there are Trillium plants available through a reputable seller such as Native Nursery over in Tallahassee, that's the route I'm taking. That's been successful because last year I bought plants and this year I have blooms. If I was waiting 5 years, who knows where I'm going to be in 5 years? I have read that if you use the proper tool like fork, shovel, then you can carefully lift it from the ground and divide the rhizomes and replant that way. If you have the skill set and you feel confident in that, then do that. One thing we want to avoid doing is going out into the native habitat in the eastern and western part of our country and digging them up from the wild. That disturbs the whole ecosystem, and frequently when plants are removed from the wild, they do not thrive and then they die. Please purchase your plants or purchase your seeds from reputable sources. Just a note for folks who are living in other parts of North America, Trilliums are all over North America. There are 30 different species of Trillium. So I'm sharing about the species most common and easiest to grow in the eastern United States. In the western United States, there's several species, different bloom colors, such as white and yellow. And the white trilliums are actually extremely common. You can find trilliums from the southern part of British Columbia all the way down to parts of California and then across Idaho, Montana, Wyoming area. If you're wondering where you might be able to plant this unusual perennial wildflower, design ideas, because this plant is not that tall, consider using it as a border in your shade garden and just know that it'll die back and you could plant in other things. You just want to be sure that you know where the plants are located so you don't damage the rhizomes. I've made it into a specimen plant. It's not a single plant, but that's going to be the specimen area for my trilliums. Gardening tip: for most success, choose a species of trillium that is native to your area. Since they're species that are found native across North America and southern British Columbia, choose one of those. They're best adapted to the sun, the soil, and the water that is in your area. And enjoy. If you have experience you'd like to share, I would love to hear from you. So please leave me a comment below. Here are some other videos you might be interested in watching. And if you've not subscribed, please subscribe. Garden Yay! See you soon.